Welcome to Inductive Bible Study. Why Inductive Bible Study? According to Dr. Trainer, the Bible is an objective body of literature and therefore requires an objective approach of study. The inductive method, being objective, corresponds to this nature of the scriptures. The Inductive Bible Study has three parts: observation, interpretation, and application. Observation, this is the first thing to do. Observe what the passage says, or pose as question, what does the passage or writer say? This takes time because it takes repeated readings to find out what is there or what is said. So the first thing to do is observation. What does the passage say? Interpretation. What does the passage or writer mean? We are looking for meaning or the writer's intent in this phase. The Bible is an ancient text and therefore carries with it the distance of time, language, culture, history, and geography. For example, the language, the New Testament was written in Greek. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew. And they are embedded in the culture and the history of their times. And so the meanings have to be determined in that context. Another important aspect in interpretation is to also ascertain how the individual passage correlates or fits in with the rest of the scriptures. So it is not just looking at the passage alone individually, but we need to examine that passage in the light of the rest of the scripture. Thirdly, application. How do we apply ourselves to the truth of the passage? The Bible is about faith and conduct. God desires we obey the teaching and principles of Scripture. Note, I've written here, how do I apply myself to the truth of the passage? Very often we ask that question, how do we apply the truth to ourselves? But I think it's more important that we apply ourselves to the truth. Now let's just read 2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So 4 things we see: teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. In verse 17, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Now the NLT puts it this way: all scripture is inspired by God and is useful to teach us what is true. Now that is the teaching, to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. Now that is the rebuking. It corrects us when we are wrong, that is the correction, and teaches us to do what is right, that is the training in righteousness. And verse 17 goes on to say, God uses it to prepare and equip His people to do every good work. And at this point, I want to say this good work would include the ministry of the Word and the ministry of works. Ministry of the Word would include teaching and preaching. Various ministry of works would range anywhere between discipling, doing acts of mercy, offering hospitality, and how we conduct ourselves in various ministries. So ministry of the Word and ministry of the works. And scriptures are the comprehensive equipment to do every good work. And I want to finish off this portion by reading J.B. Phillips' translation. All scripture is inspired by God and is useful for teaching the faith and correcting error, for resetting the direction of a man's life and training him in good living. The scriptures are the comprehensive equipment of the man of God and fit him fully for all branches of his work. Now, in inductive Bible study, there is whole aspect of asking questions. We learn to ask questions when we are studying the scriptures. Do not be afraid of asking questions. The what question, the why and when questions, the how, the where and who questions. Questions like, who is the author? To whom is he addressing? When did he say it? What did he mean? Why did he say it? Or what is the occasion and purpose of saying it? What was his intent? Where did he say it? How did he say it? What followed before? What followed after? You know, it is only when we begin asking these questions, the scriptures become strangely alive. So ask questions. And these questions are very, very important as we look at the passages in scripture. You know, people have asked me, Dorai, how do you read the scriptures? Let me share with you what has helped me. Start with observations. When I read the scriptures, I look for God. I want to meet God in the scriptures. Genesis opens with these words, in the beginning, God. You know, as we are so intent to look for ideas and principles in the scripture, as important as they are, we must not miss seeing God in all this. So look for God. You know, the greatest commandment is this: love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So look for God. And the second commandment, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. So the second thing to look for is persons. God is interested in people. God is interested in persons. So look for people in the passage. And the other thing about persons is that we can identify with them. All right. So the third thing we want to look for will be events and actions. God is working. God is moving. And God is doing things, and therefore with his people, and therefore there will be events and actions. And this is important for us to identify the verbs or action words, for they point to what that we need to obey or act in faith. So look for action words under events and actions. A fourth thing rather is to look for ideas. Ideas like salvation, good news, kingdom, love, mercy, truth, justice, righteousness, and the like. So look for God, look for persons, look for action or events, and look for ideas. The fifth thing is look for places, and they add to the veracity, the truthfulness of the events, and also the effect of these circumstances on the meaning of the passage. So look for places. And sixthly, look for time. It gives us perspective to the event or idea that has been presented. So let me summarize Inductive Bible Study for you. It has got three parts: observation, interpretation, and application. Observation asks the question, what does the passage say? Interpretation asks the question, what does the passage mean? And application asks the question, how do I apply myself to the truth of the passage? And then this whole area of questions, the what, why, and when questions, how and where and who questions. We just want to do a short exercise here. In this passage, we're going to look for God, persons, events, and actions. So let's look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. So the first thing here we need to do is to look for God. Here in this case is we identify Jesus. We look for God, Jesus. The second thing we look for is people. Who are the people here? Of course, at the end of the sentence it says among the people. Of course, you also have to look at the pronouns. It says teaching in their synagogues. So here the people will refer to the people in Galilee. So there is Jesus, there is the people in Galilee. And the third thing you need to look for is events or action words. So what are the action words? Jesus went. Went is an action word. Teaching, proclaiming, healing. So these are action words, these events. So he goes about teaching, proclaiming, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. And so those are the action words. So there are three things that we look for. God, persons, and action words. But we also look for ideas and place and time. And we look at Matthew 4:23 and look for ideas. And what is the idea here? The idea here is the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and teaching. It speaks about salvation. And Jesus was going about throughout Galilee. It talks about Jesus being on a mission. So there are ideas embedded here. Ideas of teaching, proclamation of the good news, the kingdom, and healing and salvation. Right? So there are ideas embedded in this single verse. Then we look for place. The place here is Galilee. And time. Now time is not obvious here. So of the 6 we see 5 things here. Now we move on and to another example and look at Ezra and look at all the 6 things. Where do we find God here? Verse 9 you see the good hand of his God was on him. So here God is mentioned. Verse 10 you see the law of the Lord. Here the Lord, the law of the Lord. Behind the law is the Lord. So two times here God is mentioned. The next one is to look for people. And who are the people here? Of course, it is Ezra himself. In verse 10, Ezra. In verse 9, it is in the pronoun. He began to go up. And then his God was on him. So that is Ezra here. And then the third thing to do is to look for the action words. What are the action words? He began to go up and came to Jerusalem and set his heart to study the law, to do it, and to teach. So these are the action words that we have. And the fourth one is ideas. What are the ideas that he carries? Well, the ideas that he carries is, first of all, his mission coming from Babylonia to Jerusalem, so that he could teach the Israelites the law of the Lord. So he was on a mission. Okay, the statutes and rules, these are all ideas on how to live and how to live with God, how to live with one another, and how to live with oneself. So these are ideas embedded in this portion of scripture. The good hand of his God, that is another idea that is present, the favor of God upon him. And the fifth thing to look for is place. Here is Babylonia, he's in Jerusalem. So he was in exile and now he's coming out of exile to Jerusalem. So that is the place. And then the time. Say the first day of the first month, he began to go out from Babylonia, and on the first day of the 5th month, he came to Jerusalem. So it took him 5 months to arrive at Jerusalem. So these are things that you look for in a passage. Right, this is a brief introduction to the Inductive Bible Study. Look out for the next session. God bless you.